Russia is increasing its troops.
More than 210,000 people arrived.
And in Odessa, the Russians struck a civilian house. There are casualties. Russia shelled Odessa. Rescuers reported that a nine-story building was damaged due to an enemy attack. A fire broke out on the 7th to 9th floor of the building. Rescuers evacuated 50 residents, 10 of whom, including 2 children, were rescued with the help of special equipment. Unfortunately, there are 4 victims. Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky will have a phone conversation. Both sides are already preparing for this meeting. This is reported by Politico. During the meeting, a conversation will be held about the suspension of U.S. Army supplies to Ukraine.
The U.S. is briefing Ukraine in Kyiv today. A phone conversation between Trump and Zelensky will also be organized in the near future. The U.S. says this is not a pause or suspension. The U.S. is still deciding how best to support Ukraine's defense. This remains a priority. Monday's unexpected move has caused concern and disappointment, including among leading Republicans who believe that one of the senior Pentagon officials had undue influence on this decision. Even allies of President Donald Trump were disappointed by the move and blamed officials such as Colby, who led the review of U.S. ammunition stocks that preceded the freeze. They took this step without informing the rest of the administration and others.
Ukrainian officials say that deliveries of all types of American weapons, including ammunition and spare parts, have been completely stopped. The United States denied this claim. The Pentagon insists that these are temporary and limited measures. In Ukraine, they suspect that this large-scale pressure from the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump to make our country agree to political concessions. The situation is similar to the one that was in March, when the supply of weapons and intelligence data was stopped after a public conflict between Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
The front in Ukraine, judging by everything, will not collapse in the coming months, despite the gradual advance of Russian troops. But the country faces severe consequences. The fewer weapons it receives, the more people and territory it loses.
Trump also lifted sanctions against a number of companies. He did this under the guise of lifting sanctions against Syria. Some Russian banks have been removed from the blacklist. Sanctions have also been lifted from institutions and individuals. Previously, Russian companies were also under sanctions. Now these companies are free. Sanctions have been lifted for the Russian Financial Alliance Bank. This bank belonged to Ilimzhinov. Tem Bank was also removed from the list. This bank lost its license in 2017. Sanctions were lifted from Mir Business Bank. This is the Russian branch of the Iranian bank Meli Iran. RFK Bank was also on the list. This is a state-owned enterprise. Sanctions were also lifted from the Syria import. This is a federal state-owned enterprise. Rosoboronexport was also removed from the sanctions list. This is the only state intermediary in Russia for the export-import of weapons. Sanctions were lifted for Global Concepts Group, Global Vision Group and STG Logistic were removed from the list. Maritime assistance and other were also removed from the sanctions list. Russia is trying to break the record for the number of offensive operations in June. Despite the increasing intensity of fighting, the lack of success in strategic areas indicates the exhaustion of Russian potential. The offensive, which began in May but was planned back in the winter, stretches from the northern border areas of Sumy and Kharkiv regions to the front lines in the Donetsk and Dnipro regions, where Russian troops are trying to break through for the first time. According to the deep state, in May, Russian troops advanced at the fastest pace since November last year, capturing an average of 14 square kilometers per day, which is twice as much as in April. Now, The Telegraph writes that despite the large number of attacks on the front, the Russian offensive has failed. Next, I offer you the opinion of Ukrainian expert Taras Zhovtenko. This is his post on Facebook.
The situation is as follows. On the one hand, it would be very strange if the red-haired Donnie did not rush to save the failed attempt of the summer offensive of Vladimir's best friend. You won't get far on the sabotage of anti-Russian sanctions alone. On the other hand, the Pentagon really has a sudden problem of ammunition shortage, but it is not connected with Ukraine at all. After the White House's decision to join the active exchange of strikes between Israel and Iran, to which this time, unlike the previous one, the European allies of the number U.S. almost did not show up, it turned out that the number U.S. Navy, out of fear, shot down most of the interceptor missile reserves available for the mission. And suddenly it turned out that if the Ayatollahs decided, we can do it again. Component placement, then the number U.S. fleet would have practically nothing to shoot Iranian junk from the sky in the region. And then there are the latest statements of Donald himself about his, we can do it again. Hence, the understandable panic of the newly appointed idiots in the current Pentagon leadership, headed by the appointed Donald, the supreme idiot, Ken Hegseth. Getting an empty head from someone there is just a spit. And the understandable decision of the newly appointed Pentagon idiots to save their sorry asses from the righteous anger of the bosses. The logic of this decision is also understandable. Given Donald's general mood, stop the supply of American weapons where Donald will definitely not be angry. And at the same time, flatter him by giving Donald himself a potential opportunity to flatter his best friend Vladimir. What should we do about this? The most logical and fastest are two steps. 1. Mobilize our European allies to remind Donald of all agreements on future purchases of American weapons. If Washington plays with such precedents, with weapons that will already be paid for by the Europeans, then things will not work out that way. Then this is not business, but scheming. Second, put on hold all work on creating the fund and other supporting structures provided for by the so-called Mineral Agreement until the resumption of weapons supplies. This agreement provides for the accumulation of funds for military aid already allocated and financed by Washington, including those not yet delivered. And it is precisely this that is now put on hold. After all, Donald once again confirms his reputation. His best friend Vladimir is more important to him than anything and anyone.
Meanwhile, Putin's puppet Medvedev, to whom Trump recently responded in his post, effectively legalizing his nonsense, held a meeting of so-called the Interdepartmental Commission of the Russian Security Service the day before. At this meeting, he noted that the pace of mobilization in Russia is growing. We are talking about an additional 210,000 people. Russia is actively increasing its military-industrial potential every day, and the number of mobilized people in Russia is also growing. And this once again proves that Russia will not limit itself to the war in Ukraine. It will definitely go to the countries of Europe.
Today, at a meeting of the International Commission with the participation of the military district commanders of all the heads of the Russian regions and presidential plenipotentiary envoys, we will consider the results of the recruitment of contract servicemen to the armed forces over the past 6 months. On the whole, I would like to say that the pace has been very decent, good, and as of July 1st, more than 210,000 people had arrived in military units.
Воинские части прибыло более 210 тысяч человек.
In addition, over 18,000 people have been accepted into volunteer units since the beginning of the year. This, of course, is the result of joint work. I want to thank everyone who takes part in this activity for such high results. And, of course, to note the patriotic attitude of all our citizens who entered military service, who signed a contract. I hope that we will be able to maintain the same momentum in the future. and the tasks set by the Supreme Commander-in-Chief in this area will be duly fulfilled.
надлежащим образом исполнено.
The Wall Street Journal writes that with such actions, Trump is demonstrating his weakness. The publication writes that Trump is contradicting himself. After all, he said that he wants to end this war, and by currently stopping the supply of weapons to Ukraine, he is only prolonging this war and provoking even more deaths.
American deterrence should be a rising stock after President Trump's successful strikes on the Iranian nuclear program and a NATO commitment to spend big on defense. But the commander-in-chief is now displaying weakness against Russia, which won't produce a strong and lasting peace in Ukraine. News leaks this week say the administration is denying Ukraine much-needed weapons. Our sources tell us they include Patriot air defense missiles, Hellfire missiles, some 8,500 howitzer rounds, and other ammunition. Some were already in Poland awaiting delivery. So this is a conscious decision to deny Kyiv weapons it was counting on before Russia's summer assaults. It's a hostile act that favors Vladimir Putin. The excuse offered with the leaks is that U.S. stockpiles of these arms are in short supply. But it's no surprise that the stories also finger Elbridge Colby as the driver of the arms denial. He's the Pentagon undersecretary who has argued that the U.S. can't arm Ukraine and defend U.S. interests. His chief patron in the White House is Vice President J.D. Vance, and his outside cheerleader is Tucker Carlson.
Thanks to Trump's loyalty, Putin is able to wage one of the bloodiest war in history, refuse a ceasefire, and talk about the weather at meetings.
Just now they talked about winter. So it seems that it is not coming soon, but judging by the weather, it can come quickly. The weather is like this now. Tomorrow it will be different. It seems that we have not had summer yet, and then a boom, it seems that summer will come, there will be heat, and then a tuk, again, frosts and summer.
Putin's cynicism no longer surprises anyone, and the way democratic countries are condescendingly and bowing their heads to Trump's decision is a real shock. As a Ukrainian, I will say for myself that Europe and Trump have the opportunity to play democracy with Putin because right now Ukraine is defending democracy with the lives and blood of its people. But Europeans and Americans need to finally open their eyes and understand that Putin needs to be rebuffed, direct and uncompromising. We need weapons and really working sanctions. Usually when thanking for watching, I promise that we will see each other soon. This time, I'm not sure. I take this opportunity to thank you and ask everyone in your country to stay on the side of Ukraine, on the side of truth, justice and democracy.